Part 8. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 71. Rong Yu was silent, staring at her stunning little face for a long time, and seeing the genuine smile in her eyes, he relaxed a little, and couldn't help but reach out and hold her hand, and said in a low voice, "I don't doubt you, nor do I want to monitor you." I know. Nan 11's voice was gentler, and the smile on the corner of her lips became more obvious. "I was just teasing the prince just now." Rong Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Nan 11 pursed her lips and smiled lightly. "I heard that the prince went to the prime minister's mansion to propose marriage today." Rong Yu hummed, his eyes still on her face, as if he wanted to say something but stopped. "What's wrong?" Nan 11 touched her face. "Is there something dirty on my face?" Rong Yu shook his head and was silent for a long time. His eyes were deep and unfathomable. "Do you like all good-looking people?" Nan 11 was stunned. Remembering what she said to Gu Qingshu in the forest just now, the regent king is handsome, noble, powerful, and influential. What are you qualified to be compared with him? Nan 11 couldn't help but look at Rong Yu's face carefully. He is truly a rare and noble beauty, like a fairy from the clouds descending to the mortal world, making people only dare to watch from afar in awe and not dare to have blasphemous thoughts. Nan 11 guessed that few people dared to stare at Rong Yu, otherwise they would be attracted by his face and could not move their eyes away. Just like herself in her previous life, she probably didn't look at his appearance seriously, otherwise how could she be so devoted to Gu Qingshu, the peerless scumbag? Nan 11 frowned and thought about it, then nodded slowly. "I think so." Rong Yu's eyes darkened, and his thin lips tightened in an instant. "But there is probably no one in the world who is more beautiful than the prince." Nan 11 smiled slowly, with cunning in her eyes. "At least in my eyes, no one can match the prince's beauty." It was like the fog was dispersing, like the clouds were clearing up. When Nan 11 finished her last sentence, Rong Yu's dark eyes were instantly swept away. His eyebrows and eyes were full of elegance, and the corners of his lips also rose slightly. What a demon! Nan 11 was distracted by his smile, and almost couldn't help wanting to pounce on him and take a bite. But she held back. Looking at their clasped hands with lowered eyebrows, she said in a calm tone, "Gu Qingshu said that I am vain and greedy for wealth. What do you think, Your Majesty?" No. Rong Yu's voice was low and pleasant. "Whatever you want, I will give you." This is probably the most beautiful love words in the world. Although the tone sounded light and indifferent, it was said as a matter of course and sincerely. Nan 11 was moved. "I have money, you have power, we are a perfect match." Rong Yu nodded. "Yes. They are a perfect match, no one can separate them. She can only be his in this life. No, she can only be his for all eternity." "Does the prince like to drink peach wine?" Nan 11 raised her eyes. "I'll go pick some fresh peach blossoms and make wine for the prince." "Okay." "Yes." Rong Yu would agree to whatever she wanted to do. Nan 11 couldn't help laughing. The more she got along with Rong Yu, the more she felt that she was really stupid in her previous life. How could Rong Yu be scary or hateful? He was so cute. Being with him always made her feel touched, and her mood would involuntarily improve. The haze in her heart would unconsciously be brushed away, and only the bright sunshine would illuminate her eyebrows and eyes. The peach garden of the princess's mansion is very large. The noble ladies just now scattered, and no one could be seen at this time. Nan 11 was held by Rong Yu's slender big hand, and walked slowly in the forest like a leisurely stroll. She felt the warmth in her palms along the blood vessels in that arm directly into her heart, slowly fermenting in her internal organs, making her intoxicated. She didn't know that Gu Qingshu in the forest had his chin removed by two men in black, and was dragged out with his head covered. He was dragged to an empty corner, and his fists fell without a break, hitting him so hard that he curled up in pain and couldn't even scream. "Is your highness worried that someone in the princess's mansion will embarrass me?" Nan 11 looked at the two slender figures, one tall and one short, on the ground and said casually, "Your Highness would not come to attend such a banquet normally." Rong Yu hummed inaudibly. Nan 11 was silent. Rong Yu, the regent of the Great Zhou, was a godlike existence in the hearts of the people of the Great Zhou. No matter which minister had a banquet at home, someone would send someone to pass the invitation to the housekeeper of the regent's mansion, although Rong Yu never went once. People like him simply disdained to attend the banquets of the ministers. The emperor, who was the supreme ruler, still needed to win over the ministers for his own use, but Rong Yu was so noble and powerful that he didn't need to win over anyone at all. Nan 11 lowered her eyes, and couldn't help but feel guilty again. "Your Highness," a man from the forest came hurriedly and knelt on one knee. "The Emperor sent the chief steward of the palace to ask your Highness to come to the palace to discuss something." Rong Yu frowned and said coldly, "I am busy." "I am free." Nan 11 turned to look at him. "The Emperor wants to see your Highness, how can your Highness not go?" Rong Yu was silent. "I know what the Emperor wants to say to your Highness," Nan 11 said indifferently. "The Emperor will say that he will grant your Highness a marriage and use me to exchange for the military token in your Highness's hand. If the Emperor really makes such a request, will your Highness exchange it?" Rong Yu was silent for a moment, thinking of what Nan 11 said to him yesterday, holding on to the military power tightly, and then said indifferently, "If I want to marry a wife, I don't need anyone's consent. Even if that person is the Emperor, he has no right to decide his marriage." "That's right, the prince wants to marry a wife, why do you need other people's favors?" Nan 11 raised her lips and smiled, but her tone was somewhat meaningful, "but the prince should still enter the palace. The Emperor is still the Emperor after all, and he still deserves the face he deserves. Give. Even if it's just superficial." Rong Yu hummed. "But please remember, Your Majesty, don't let anything enter your mouth after entering the palace," Nan 11 said in a calm and deep tone, "whether it is the Emperor or the Queen Mother, no matter whether it is wine or tea, Your Majesty is not allowed to eat it." Rong Yu looked at her without saying a word. "Your Majesty, there is no need to feel strange." Nan 11 stood up on tiptoes and kissed the corners of his lips. "It is essential to be on guard against others, not to mention that what we have to guard against is the person who wants to kill the prince. Only by being careful can we avoid the consequences of others." New Yearship. In his previous life, Rong Yu fell into the Emperor's plot. In order to prevent Rong Yu from being alerted, Rong Chuiyun used chronic poison, easily addictive Wanju, and increased the dose little by little. No matter how deep his internal power was, he could not even notice it. The toxins that did not come out were killing his body day by day and weakening his strength. A person like Rong Yu is so powerful that people have to be afraid of him, and he doesn't even dare to be careless when it comes to scheming. "Then I'll go to the palace first," Rong Yu said calmly. "Do you want to stay here for a while or go back to the Prime Minister's mansion?" "Report to the Prince Regent." The person who reported the matter spoke in a timely manner, with a respectful tone. Manager Yang also said that the Queen summoned Miss Nan and asked her to enter the palace immediately. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 72. Nan 11 smiled faintly. "If the Queen can't see me, will she not give up?" "She was summoned yesterday, but Rong Yu ordered someone to refuse on the grounds that Miss Nan was trapped in the palace by the regent." "Why did she continue to summon her today? Is it because he learned that she came to the princess's mansion to attend the birthday banquet of Princess Bailing? It seems that the spies in the palace are everywhere." "Don't pay attention to her," Rong Yu said faintly. "I will ask someone to send you back to the Prime Minister's mansion." "No need." Nan 11 shook her head. "The more impatient the Queen is, the easier it is to deal with. Besides, I entered the palace with the prince, and the Queen can't do anything bad to me. Even if she was concerned about the regent's face, the Queen couldn't make things too difficult for her. Instead, Nan 11 could use the Queen's mouth to find out the Emperor's bottom line." Rong Yu and Nan 11 left Daowen and walked towards the front yard. Qing Yang, Yun Yu, and Yin's Huang, who were waiting outside the garden, followed silently, passing through the winding corridors, with wisteria flowers hanging down like waterfalls on both sides, emitting a light fragrance. Miss Nan, a young man hurried over at the end of the corridor, his face full of anxiety. "Miss, have you seen my young master? I can't find him no matter how hard I try. He was clearly in the direction of Daowin just now." "As Mr. Gu's servant, why don't you follow him closely?" Nan 11 stopped and spoke without any emotion. "Men and women should not be intimate. How do I know where he is? This person is Gu Qingshi's servant, named Yandere, who is quite smart." In the past, Nan 11 loved the mansion and took good care of this young man, but now, because of Gu Qingshu, she dislikes everyone in the Gu mansion. Yandere choked. The regent is here, don't you know to bow?" Yandere's face changed, and just as he was about to look up, he suddenly realized that he was being rude. He only saw the noble black robe in his sight, and he knelt down with a plop. Little people greet the regent is long lived, long lived." Rong Yu looked indifferent, and didn't even spare him a glance, and just passed by him. Nan 11 was held by his arm, so she naturally followed him to leave. Passing by the noisy front yard, a young man saw Rong Yu and Nan 11, and was stunned at first. Then he bowed respectfully and said carefully, "Someone is holding a Kushui Liu's Hang event over there. Are the prince and Miss Nan interested in joining in the fun?" Rong Yu is an extremely cold person, usually doesn't pay much attention to these people, and of course it is even more impossible for him to attend any Kushui Liu's Hang banquet. "The prince and I have something to do." The young man nodded and quickly bowed and left. "Little uncle," the princess heard the servant's report and came over surrounded by people, bowing gracefully. "Are uncle and Miss Nan going to the palace?" she asked even though she knew it. Yang, the chief steward beside the emperor, came to convey the emperor's order in person, and even conveyed the queen's order to Nan 11. How could the princess not know? Nan 11 nodded. "The queen summoned me, I dare not go." Rong Yu remained silent, without any reaction to the servants kneeling and bowing around him, and walked out of the princess's mansion with Nan 11. Although the princess was older than the regent, she was shorter in seniority, and the regent was in power and in the limelight. Naturally, she did not dare to neglect it, and the people along the way escorted her to the gate of the princess's mansion. Men and women should not touch each other. Miss Nan is still a virgin. The young uncle should consider her reputation. The princess smiled, without any abnormality on her face. "I ask someone to prepare another carriage for Miss Nan." "I dare not trouble the princess." Nan 11 declined and smiled nonchalantly. "I am now a celebrity in the imperial city. My reputation has long been ruined. Why should I care about my reputation? I will just ride in the same carriage with the prince. We can still talk on the way." Hearing this, the princess pulled a smile from the corner of her mouth. "Miss Nan is open-minded and has a clever mouth." "Princess, you are too kind." Nan 11 smiled lightly. "The prince is indifferent and taciturn, so I should naturally say more. Otherwise, if two ice cubes get together, how will we live the rest of our lives?" The princess smiled a little coldly. "The rest of her life? Is this because she is sure that she can marry the regent and is ready to be the regent princess?" Rong Yu's heart couldn't help but throb. "The rest of her life?" Nan 11 quickly got on the carriage and said to Rong Yu, "The prince didn't come on horseback, did he?" "Get on, I'll sit with the prince." Originally, Rong Yu planned to ride a horse into the palace, so he didn't prepare any other carriages except the one Nan 11 took when he came. However, after Nan 11 finished speaking, he didn't say anything and got on the carriage directly. The eldest princess lowered her head slightly and watched the carriage slowly drive away. When the carriage went away, her face suddenly turned cold. "Where is Gu Qingshu?" The servant beside her replied, "No, we haven't found him yet." The eldest princess flicked her sleeves and turned to enter the mansion. "Waste. Nan 11 thought of the eldest princess's attitude just now, and her red lips curved slightly. Although the person she was respectful to was Rong Yu, she could not avoid taking advantage of him. After lowering the curtain, Nan 11's voice became more playful. It is true that being with the prince has many advantages. Even the honorable and favored princess has to give me some respect. Rong Yu looked at her. When you become the regent princess in the future, the emperor, the queen, and the princess will all be your juniors. Is he asking her for marriage? Nan 11 frowned and couldn't help but laugh when she thought that the 40-year-old eldest princess would have to call her auntie. Such a scene was really unimaginable. If she really marries the regent, except for the old princes who have already stepped onto the coffin board, the other royal family members will almost all be her juniors, and they will have to call them auntie when they meet. There is no way. Rong Yu's seniority is too high. That's right. Nan 11 thought about the anxious expression on Gu Qingshu's boy, who didn't seem to be hypocritical, and she had some speculation in her mind. She raised her eyes and looked at the noble man in front of her. Did something happen to Gu Qingshu? Gu Qingshu was last year's top pick, had good relationships with some young masters, and was a young rookie in front of the emperor. In the eldest princess's mansion, except for Rong Yu, no one should be unfavorable to Gu Qingshu. Yes, Rong Yu's voice was light. It's just a light punishment. A light punishment? Nan 11 said. Didn't his hands and feet get crippled? Rong Yu said, no. Why? Nan 11 is just curious. After all, Rong Yu has never been a soft-hearted person. If he wants to deal with Gu Qingshu, he can easily make this person disappear from the world without even lifting a finger. Rong Yu was honest. You will be unhappy. Why am I unhappy? Nan 11 was stunned. Do you think I still have feelings for him? Rong Yu shook his head. No. What is that? Nan 11 looked at him, and suddenly a flash of light flashed through her mind. Your Majesty, are you worried that your methods will be too harsh to scare me? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 73. Rong Yu said nothing. His deep eyes locked on her eyebrows. His expression was acquiescence. Nan 11 laughed. Your Majesty won't hit me. What should I be afraid of? I won't hit you. Rong Yu stretched out his hand to hold her. I will never. Nan 11 couldn't help laughing. How can this man be so cute? I know that the prince will not hit me. She smiled, with a small smile in her eyes. I didn't say that the prince would hit me. Rong Yu saw her smiling so heartily, and he didn't quite understand what made her smile. However, she was happy, and he was in a good mood too, and the corners of his noble and cold eyes were rarely dyed with a soft smile. When you enter the inner city, you have to go separately. Rong Yu went to see the emperor, while Nan 11 followed the palace servants who came to lead the way to the harem. In front of many palace people, Rong Yu also told Yin Yu and Yin Shuang without hesitation, protect your girl, and don't allow anyone to embarrass her. Yin Yu and Yin Shuang responded respectfully. If the girl loses even a hair, I will skin you. Yin Yu shuddered slightly and immediately said, Master, don't worry, with my subordinates and Yin Shuang here, even the King of Heaven, I can't even think of touching the girl's hair. Nan 11 raised her hand to smooth Rong Yu's slightly raised eyebrows, and comforted her gently. Don't worry, there are many spies in the palace. The queen knows that I came to the palace with the prince, so even if she has any dissatisfaction with me, she will take the prince into consideration. Don't dare mess around. Rong Yu pursed her lips. If there is anything wrong, please send Yin Huang to report it to me immediately. Nan 11 nodded. She wanted to say that Rong Yu was really too nervous. The queen was not an idiot, so how could she blatantly embarrass her? But Nan 11 still overestimated the queen. The woman sent by the queen to take her to Fenji Palace was not a palace maid, But Bai, the queen's biological sister. Of course, there was a huge crowd behind her, but it was true that they were the maids from Fenji Palace, and the pomp seemed quite grand. Miss Nan has really been stealing the show these past 2 days. This Miss Bai was hostile to her. As soon as she saw the regent leaving, she taunted her in a sinister way. Everyone in the imperial city is talking about your affairs. It's really a big deal. Quite majestic. Nan 11 glanced at her. What's wrong with being in the limelight? There's nothing wrong with being in the limelight, but there's absolutely no benefit in being too much. Bai said coldly, you're a frivolous person. Do you really think the regent likes you? Yunya frowned and said angrily, what did you say? Nan 11 smiled lightly, whether the regent likes me or not is a matter between him and me. It seems to have nothing to do with Miss Bai. Bai gritted his teeth, you are not worthy of the regent, so don't have such wishful thinking. Am I not worthy of the regent? Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Miss Bai, do you think you are worthy? Beatty's face was gloomy. Nan 11 understands. It seems that not everyone regards Rongyu as a vicious god. There are still some people who know the truth. However, she didn't have any special thoughts about this. She just said lightly, the regent is my person. Whether he is worthy of it or not, it is a matter between me and him. If others want to take advantage of the regent, it is probably no. Silver Moon blinked, the regent is mine? The girl is so domineering. If her prince heard this, he would probably be very happy. That's right, this is how you should declare your sovereignty. Her prince is such a noble person, how can he be thought of by cats and dogs? Beatty's face changed slightly. What did you say? I think I have said it clearly enough. Miss Bai had better go back and look in the mirror to see how her appearance is worthy of the regent. Nan 11 smiled lightly, so I will give you the same words, don't have any wishful thinking, the regent is not worthy of you. Beatty's face was ashen, and she almost couldn't help but want to slap him, but she knew that she couldn't do it, so she had to clench her hands tightly to restrain the anger in her heart. She said gloomily, Miss Nan, although you are very sharp-tongued, I wonder if you dare to speak in such an attitude when you arrive at Fenji Palace. Miss Bai, you might as well take a good look at it. Nan 11 always had a calm attitude. In contrast, Bai looked so angry that he lost control and showed no self-cultivation at all. Beatty stopped talking. Nan 11 is too venomous, arrogant, shameless, and uneducated. There is obviously no benefit to be gained by talking fast with her. Bai considers herself to be a dignified, well-behaved, elegant, and well-educated lady from an aristocratic family, and does not bother to compete with others verbally. She didn't believe it. When she arrived in front of the queen later, the bitch dared to be so arrogant. So she snorted coldly and remained silent all the way. Walking into the spacious and elegant palace garden, the orchids in the small garden in the corner of Fenji Palace are in bloom. Nan 11 looked relaxed, as if she was walking in her own backyard, without the nervousness and restraint of an ordinary official woman when meeting the queen. Before stepping into Fenji Palace, she heard the sounds of many women chatting and laughing in Fenji Palace. The atmosphere seemed quite relaxed. Beatty walked in familiarly, ignoring Nan 11, and of course had no intention of reporting. After the palace maid behind her entered the door, she said respectfully, Queen, Miss Nan is here. After the palace maid finished speaking, the laughter and chatter in the palace stopped abruptly. Nan 11 stood waiting outside the hall. She thought the queen would announce her entry soon, but due to the distance, Nan 11 clearly felt that after a brief period of silence, the palace quickly became noisy again. The queen's makeup today is really good. This red embroidered dress matches the queen's temperament. She looks really beautiful and noble. Yes, I think so too. The queen is naturally beautiful. Her appearance is naturally gorgeous, and the key is that her temperament is also naturally noble, which makes me feel ashamed. You are the only ones who can say that a woman pretended to be angry and scolded, but in fact, she couldn't hide a bit of pride in her voice. Last night, the emperor said that I was haggard these 2 days, but in your mouth, I became radiant. The emperor is distressed by the queen. Bai stood aside and said with a smile, Sister, it's hard to manage such a large harem, and it's right for the emperor to feel distressed by her sister. Miss Bai is right. The queen is working hard, and the emperor sees it in his eyes. Of course, he feels distressed. The queen was flattered and praised by people on the left and right. She couldn't hide her smile on her delicately made-up face, with a bit of joy and a bit of victory. Although the women sitting in the palace praised her, they were all her rivals, so their flattery was not sincere, but this was not important. What was important was that they were all defeated. Listening to the flattery of competitors and groveling in front of her was a kind of superior pleasure, which made people happy. Nan 11 stood outside the palace, listening to the flattery of the concubines in the harem, and her lips slightly raised. If this was considered a show of power, Nan 11 said she didn't want to accompany her. Please inform her again, Nan 11 said lightly, if the queen is busy and has no time to see me, I will go back first. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 74. When the palace maid heard this, her expression changed slightly. She probably didn't expect Nan 11 to be so bold and dare to speak like this outside the queen's Fenji palace. There are many aristocratic families in the imperial capital, and all civil and military families in the Manchu dynasty have daughters, but which woman doesn't wait obediently when summoned by the queen? Even if the queen deliberately made things difficult, no one would dare to express dissatisfaction, except Nan 11. The palace maid lowered her head, walked to the queen, and cautiously reported again, even whispering Nan 11's words into her ear. After hearing this, the queen's face immediately turned cold. Sure enough, relying on the power of the regent, you don't know how high the sky is. How dare you be so arrogant after entering the palace? Isn't Miss Nan impatient with waiting? Beatty smiled lightly, adding fuel to the fire at the right time. You've just arrived, why don't you have any patience? No matter how arrogant and domineering she is, she can't stand it in front of the queen. It's time to maintain the most basic respect. When the queen heard this, her face immediately turned cold. She is only 17 years old this year. She is the daughter of a pampered family. Her grandfather is a veteran of the cabinet and one of the emperor's most trusted ministers. Her father holds military power. Although he is not as accomplished as the regent in battle, he is still a capable general in the court. The emperor had to rely on her father and grandfather to deal with the regent, so Bairura had the ability to be arrogant, and because she was still young, she had not yet developed a calm attitude. At this moment, her anger was about to melt away. Make a blade. Slave, please go and have a look. Dozai, the eldest maid beside the queen, spoke promptly, leaning slightly to salute, with a light and respectful smile on her face. Your Majesty, there is no need to be angry for someone who doesn't understand the rules. Bairura suppressed her temper. I almost forgot that there were so many concubines in the palace, and she must not be laughed at. Go ahead, she said calmly, just say that I am not feeling well and I just got up. Let her wait outside for a while. Yes. Dozai responded, turned around and walked out, and Beatty followed. She just wanted to see how Nan 11 was defeated. It is the warm spring season now, it is morning again, and the climate is comfortable. It wasn't too difficult for Nan 11 to stand outside, but her patience was limited and she was not interested in playing any show-off tricks with the queen and the concubines in the harem. Miss Nandozai came out and saw Nan 11 standing outside the palace, and smiled lightly. The queen went to bed late last night and is feeling a little unwell. She just got up now. Please wait a moment. Wait a moment? Nan 11 promised that if she really waited here for a while, the waiting time would never be less than an hour. Even if she had not seen it personally, she had heard about the torture methods used by these ladies in the palace. And just got up. So what was chattering in the palace just now was a group of female ghosts talking. The queen is resting. Yunya frowned and said in a cold tone, "Are you talking blindly with your eyes open?" Yunyan 11 glanced at her and smiled lightly. "It doesn't matter." Yunyu's face changed slightly, "But girl, it's important for the queen to rest." A cold smile appeared on the corner of Beatty's mouth. "Miss Nan is really sensible, so we won't disturb you anymore. Please wait here, Miss Nan, and don't be rude. You can tell the queen so that she doesn't have to worry." Nan 11 interrupted her with a calm and unconcerned tone, "I can come over later." After that, he turned around and walked out. What? Dozai was stunned, unable to react in time. "When to meet the queen? When can you say that you will come back later?" Bai Dai obviously didn't expect Nan 11 to react like this. After being surprised, when he saw that she actually walked out, he couldn't help but said angrily, "Nan 11, you are so brave." Nan 11 turned around and looked at Bai Dai in confusion. "The queen summoned you here for questioning, how could you leave on your own?" "But the queen has just gotten up and needs to wash up and change clothes, right?" Nan 11 smiled lightly, as if she didn't understand what was wrong with leaving first. "There are people waiting here, the queen may be anxious, and she will lose her temper when she is anxious. The palace maid will be trembling while waiting for you to wash. I will leave for now. If the queen is not well rested, she can take a good rest. It won't be too late to see me again after she regains her energy. I'm not in a hurry." "Don't be in a hurry." Bai Dai almost couldn't get up in one breath. "Who cares whether you are in a hurry or not? Co-author, you still haven't figured out who wants to meet whom, right? Even if the concubines in the palace arrive here and catch the queen resting, they have to wait obediently. Who dares to leave on her own? There are simply no rules at all. Miss Bai, the regent has a bad temper. I can't leave him for too long." Nan 11 looked at Bai Dai calmly and smiled lightly. "If the regent comes over after meeting the emperor and can't see me, I'm afraid we'll be angry." Yunya nodded. "Yes, my prince has a bad temper. He will be very angry when he can't see the girl. When the regent gets angry, who will suffer?" Beatty's expression changed. "Are you using the regent to suppress me?" "Miss Bai, don't think too highly of yourself." Nan 11 smiled faintly, her smile full of sarcasm. "Putting the regent on you? Do you think you are worthy?" Beatty's face turned pale. "Nan 11. Miss Nan dares to put on airs in the Fenji palace of the queen." Dozai's eyes fell on Nan 11, and she said with a fake smile, "The queen summoned Miss Nan to show her love for her. Even if Miss Nan doesn't understand the rules of the palace, she shouldn't be unable to wait for such a short time. She is indeed worthy of being the maid who serves the queen." The depth of her words is different from that of Bai Dai, a spoiled daughter. In just 2 sentences, she put the emphasis on the 3 words "can't wait." Unwilling to wait, can't wait, is this not taking the queen seriously? Nan 11 said that she really didn't take the queen seriously. If it were normal times, she certainly wouldn't mind waiting, but today the queen was clearly using the name of summoning to intimidate her, or deliberately trying to make things difficult for her. Bai Dai and Dozai knew it as well. But what about it? The hat of disrespect put on anyone's head will make people panic. But it has no effect on Nan 11. So she didn't want to cooperate with the queen. Since she wanted to embarrass Nan 11, Nan 11 naturally didn't mind making the queen lose face in front of the concubines in the harem. "I'll come over when the queen is free." Nan 11 left the sentence and turned to walk out. "Yins Huang, go see where your prince is. We should go back." "Yes." She left as soon as she said she would, without any hesitation, and she didn't even mind letting Bai Dai and Tao Ji know that she was arrogant because of her power as the regent, and she didn't even care about the queen. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 75. If Dozai really lets her go, the queen will definitely lose her face today. Miss Nan, please stay, she said, her tone obviously softer, but she could hear a hint of suppressed anger. When I go to ask the queen for instructions, there happen to be several other concubines in the palace waiting to give advice to the queen. Greetings, Miss Nan. If you don't mind, you might as well go in and greet the concubines first. Nan 11 turned around and said, in that case, I'll trouble you. Although she said this, she just turned around and did not continue walking forward. It was obvious that she planned to leave if she disagreed. Beatty looked at Nan 11 coldly, and saw that she looked relaxed and leisurely, without any of the formality that she should have in Fenji Palace. There was even a kind of lightness and contentment between her eyebrows and eyes, and she couldn't help but feel more and more angry, and her expression became more and more angry. Darkened. Miss Nan really taught me a lot today, she sneered disdainfully. Sure enough, it's different when you have a backer. No wonder she abandoned her fiancé, whom she has loved for 4 years, and joined the regent. Nan 11 raised her eyebrows. Are you jealous? Beatty's expression changed. I'm not as shameless as you. You're just jealous, Nan 11 said calmly, as if she didn't hear her abuse, but jealousy doesn't help. In addition to talking nonsense, Miss Bai said bad words like an uncultured shrew, and probably there is nothing else that can be done. Bai Dai said angrily, you. Goodbye, I think it's better for Miss Bai to stay in the house and cultivate her character. Nan 11 smiled lightly. The dissolution of our engagement with Gu Qingshu is a matter between me and him. If I join the regent's arms, then it's a matter between me and the regent, and it seems to have nothing to do with you. You are so frivolous and have disgraced women, so you deserve to be criticized verbally and in writing. Nan 11 nodded slowly. That makes sense. Beatty sneered, as long as you know it makes sense, it proves that you still have some sense of shame. Nan 11 tilted her head and said in a light voice, when I meet your prince later, remember to tell him truthfully what Miss Bai said, word for word, and tell your prince that I have an engagement with Gu Qingshu. His behavior of raping his daughter is wrong, and he deserves to be criticized by the world. Bai Dai's expression suddenly changed. Yunyu blinked, but girl, your engagement with Gu Qingshu has been terminated. The engagement has been terminated, but in this world there are people who are blind and deaf, pretending not to know anything, and then eager to throw dirty water on others. Nan 11 smiled lightly. Look, I am the one who terminated the engagement with Gu Qingshu. It's my fault that the regent likes me. Do I have a face full of faults? Bai Dai was furious. Nan 11. Yunyu raised a finger and shook her head at Beatty calmly. In Fenji Palace, on the queen's territory, Miss Bai still has to pay attention to her image. Don't let others think you are an uneducated woman. Beatty's face turned blue and white, and she looked like she was so angry that smoke was coming out of her head. It's not that the girl's face is full of faults. Yunyu then turned to look at Nan 11 and explained patiently, it's that the world is used to bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Whether my prince likes the girl or the girl is attracted to my prince. If my prince doesn't agree, the girl won't be able to give in, right? Nan 11 nodded. You are right. But Miss Bai doesn't dare to say this in front of my prince, so she can only find fault with the girl with envy and hatred. Yunyu curled her lips, seeming to look down on Beatty's bullying behavior. She thought she had the support of the queen. The girl must swallow her anger, but Miss Bai has forgotten that my prince is going to marry Miss Nan. Once Miss Nan becomes the regent, even the queen should be called the royal aunt. This generational hierarchy cannot be messed up. After saying these words, Beatty's face seemed to have been scratched by something, stiff and white, and she couldn't say a word. Just at this moment, Dozai walked out of the palace and said calmly, the queen asked Miss Nan to go in. Beatty then clenched the handkerchief tightly, snorted coldly, and walked into the hall with a puff of sleeves. Nan 11 didn't say anything more, her expression was slightly restrained, and she silently walked towards the main hall of Fenji Palace. Yunyu and Yin's Huang followed closely, but when they reached the palace steps, Dozai raised his hand to stop him. The queen has only summoned Miss Nan, and no one else is allowed in. As his name suggests, the Silver Frost man looked at her expressionlessly, his eyes full of cold frost. Dozai's heart palpitated, but she suppressed her uneasiness. This is not possible. Yin Yu is not as strong as Yin Shuang, but her words are not inferior at all. My prince has told me that Yin Shuang and I must follow Miss Nan every step of the way. If you don't let us follow, Miss Nan can't go in. Dozai took a deep breath, and the veins on his forehead jumped. As a personal maid in the queen's palace, she can guarantee that she has never seen such an arrogant and domineering maid. All the concubines in the harem have good family backgrounds, but who comes to pay respects to the queen without being respectful and frightened? Only this Nan 11 and the two sluts behind her were so bold. Nan 11 tilted her head to look at her with a half smile. They are the people sent to me by the regent. They only follow the regent's orders. There is nothing I can do. Dozai's face turned green, she couldn't help but clenched her hands, and had no choice but to let go. Yunyu and Yin's Huang followed Nan 11 into the main hall of Fenji Palace in a grand manner, just like black and white. The hall was unusually quiet, and several pairs of eyes stared at Nan 11 who walked in. The queen sat on the phoenix chair in front of her, wearing a deep red palace robe with a fiery red phoenix embroidered on it. The thin silver lines outlined the delicate outline, which was elegant and luxurious. The corners of the robe decorated with small glass beads dangled lightly at the ankles, which further demonstrated her noble demeanor. Nan 11 walked to the center of the phoenix carpet and swept her eyes across her face. It can be seen that the queen was only 17 or 18 years old. Her eyebrows were painted dignified and noble. Her thick and high hair was inserted with a red gold filigree warm jade fire phoenix hairpin containing pearls. She looked really noble and majestic. Your servant Nan 11, I meet the queen. Nan 11 bowed slightly, elegant and calm. I wonder why the queen summoned me here. Several concubines in the harem sat on the left and right. At this time, they all squinted their eyes and carefully looked at Nan 11's appearance. She was indeed a bright and moving woman. A palm-sized face, skin as white and flawless as the finest cream, lips without makeup, straight nose, slender figure, standing here at this moment, can't hide the dazzling light. It's really jealous. Since Miss Nan calls herself a servant, she should know that she has to kneel down to pay respect to the queen. A concubine next to her said with a smile, before coming here, didn't anyone teach Miss Nan the rules of the palace? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 76. The queen frowned displeased and turned to look at Beatty. I just asked you to go outside to greet Miss Nan. Didn't you remind her of the rules and etiquette in the palace? Damn it for her, the queen, to lose face in front of so many bitches. Bai cried out aggrievedly, Sister Queen, please calm down. Miss Nan is an official lady, how can she not understand the rules and etiquette? This is true. The queen paused for a moment, then glanced at Nan 11 lukewarmly, reached out to take the teacup handed over by Dozai, opened the tea lid, and took a sip slowly. That's because Miss Nan deliberately didn't put me in the cup in your eyes. As soon as these words came out, the other concubines present were stunned. They involuntarily put down the teacups in their hands, raised their heads attentively and waited to watch the show. The entire hall was silent. Miss Nan Beatty turned her gaze and raised her chin. When you see the queen, you must kneel down and salute. If you don't understand this rule, I can ask the nuns in the palace to teach you. You want my girl to kneel down? Yunya raised her eyebrows. You guys have such big faces. You are so presumptuous. In front of the queen and many concubines, Beatty obviously gained some courage and rebuked coldly, in front of the queen, you are tolerated regardless of your superiority or inferiority. You are neither big nor small. Yunyu sneered, I forgot to tell you that my prince has a destiny, and Miss Nan has the right not to kneel before you when she enters the palace. Could it be that the queen thinks she is more noble than the emperor? You. It turns out that Miss Nan is so honorable. The queen put down the teacup in her hand, placed her hands on her legs dignifiedly, her cold eyebrows showed a bit of displeasure. It seems that I have to think carefully before summoning Miss Nan in the future. Oh, so as not to make the regent blame you for any rudeness. After saying this, she slowly raised her eyes to look at the girl standing in the hall, and then her eyes were narrow and a little keen on Nan 11's extraordinary appearance. However, when her eyes moved slightly downward and fell on Nan 11's elegant yet luxurious clothes, her pupils suddenly shrank and her fingers clenched tighter involuntarily. Moonlight yarn. She couldn't even get the moonlight gauze that was offered as tribute by the kingdom of Shu. In the end, it was all taken away by the regent. Unexpectedly, it was given to Nan 11, a damn bitch. The queen's heart was filled with anger, but she controlled it tightly, not wanting the concubines to see the joke. It is an honor for me that the regent shows great love to me. Nan 11 spoke slowly and calmly, her tone was calm, but the queen does not have to have any scruples just for the sake of the regent. I am not a person who does not know the difference between right and wrong, nor am I acting arrogantly and arrogantly relying on the regent's favor. After these words were finished, the hall fell into silence again. The queen looked at the woman in front of her gloomily and smiled coldly. So, I have wronged Miss Nan. Of course it's impossible to say that she didn't know Nan 11 before. They are of the same age and have similar family backgrounds. Before entering the palace, no matter which noble lady from aristocratic family she was attending a flower viewing banquet or a birthday banquet, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other. But she was not familiar with Nan 11. The Bai family is a century-old family in the imperial capital. It has a noble family and has been prominent in the imperial capital for hundreds of years. The family background is somewhat similar to that of the Wen family. There have been two noble concubines in the ancestors. But Nan 11's father, Nan Xingzi, was a prime minister who had just risen from a poor family. From being impoverished and needing the support of his first wife to be admitted to the top exam, he later stepped into the official career and rose up step by step, only to gain the power he has today. Compared with the Bai family, the difference between the Nan family and the real nobles is that of rich people. Moreover, Nan 11 also has a mother who is a merchant, so Bairuro looks down on Nan 11 from the bottom of her heart. In addition, Nan 11's previous crush has always been Gu Qingshu. Who is Gu Qingshu? In the eyes of ordinary people, he is a carp that jumped over the Dragon Gate, a high-ranking #1 scholar. However, in the eyes of serious ladies from famous families like Bairura, he is just a little sparrow who has just entered the court and become a rookie. Bairura usually wouldn't look at him twice, so when Nan 11 liked him, Bairura didn't pay much attention to Nan 11. After all, this is how it is between noble ladies of aristocratic families. When there is no conflict of interest, it can be done without disturbing the river. Even if someone occasionally talked about them, Bairura would just laugh it off and ignore it, not taking it seriously. Bairura even subconsciously felt that a latecomer like Nan 11 was not worthy of being compared with her. Even if she had a prime minister father, and even if the current prime minister was the minister in front of the emperor, Bairura had never had the idea of being on good terms with Nan 11. However, things are really unpredictable. How long has it been? The woman she once didn't even bother to take a look at actually got into a relationship with the regent, and even dared to be so arrogant and presumptuous in front of her, the queen of the palace. It's really very resourceful. Bairura suppressed the furious emotions in her heart and was about to speak when a woman next to her spoke. Since Miss Nan knows that she shouldn't rely on the regent's power to be arrogant and domineering, she should understand the etiquette of monarchs and ministers. It is true that the regent's position is high and powerful, but in the world there is only one a master, The regent is also a minister in front of the emperor, Miss Nan should know this. Bairura had already suppressed her anger. Although she was angry with Nan 11 for not knowing what was good or bad, she still cared about the power of the regent. However, when she heard what concubine U next to her said, she suddenly felt that what she said made sense. Lord and minister, Lord and minister. No matter how powerful the regent is, he is just a minister in front of the emperor. Is it possible that he still plans to rebel? Since even the regent is a minister, why doesn't Nan 11 kneel down when she sees the queen? Jade concubine is right, but I couldn't wait to speak. Miss Nan has turned a blind eye to all the ladies since she entered the palace, and she doesn't know whether they recognize them or they are arrogant. Nan 11 smiled lightly, her expression always calm, and she stood quietly, neither humble nor arrogant. There was a cold look in the queen's eyes, and her tone was calm. Miss Nan is beautiful and has such a special temper, which is somewhat to my liking. Nan 11 smiled lightly, thank you, Queen, for your love. It's an honor for me. It's March now, the weather is just right, and the day for the Emperor's talent show is coming soon. Bairura said. Girl Nan's age and family background meet the conditions for entering the palace, so it stands to reason that she should participate in the talent show. What? The concubines sitting on both sides were stunned for a moment, then looked at each other in confusion. Participate in the draft? Yes, why didn't they think of it? The daughters of first-class ministers should have their portraits sent directly to the palace during the emperor's draft, and then be screened by the inner court and then presented to the emperor. After passing 5 tests, 6 generals will enter the harem and become concubines. Oh no, the women who are drafted into the palace, where can you be promoted to concubine so quickly? The most people in the palace can call her is Little Master. If the queen wants to control her, won't it be as easy as handling an ant? The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 77. The concubines quickly understood the queen's inner plan, and secretly said that the queen was indeed stupid. The emperor put her in the position of head of the harem, not only because he wanted to rely on her grandfather and father to compete with the regent, but also because he had some intention of killing the donkey. Once the power of the regent is reduced in the future and the emperor stabilizes his throne, I wonder how long the queen can sit on the throne? Entering the palace as a concubine, Nan 11 chuckled, the queen is joking, I have no intention of entering the palace as a concubine. Who is kidding you? Bairura said coldly, when an official woman reaches the right age, she must pass the palace draft. This is the rule. Only when the emperor swipes people away during the draft will you have the right to marry freely. Nan 11 hummed indifferently, in that case, I will discuss it with the regent when I go back and listen to his opinion. Nan 11, don't always scare me with the regent, Bairura said coldly and angrily, I act according to the rules, even the regent has nothing to say. Who says the prince regent has nothing to say? If the emperor really dares to get Miss Nan into the palace, her prince will definitely tear down the emperor's harem. Yunya frowned unhappily and tried to speak several times but was stopped by Nan 11. Compared with the queen's anger, Nan 11's calm look at this moment is really heartbreaking. Since the regent has nothing to say, I have to ask him for instructions, lest the regent thinks it's me. He was so heartless that he clung to the emperor's gauzier and then abandoned him. The queen took a deep breath, collected her emotions, and said calmly, Miss Nan, you may not be happy to hear some words, but I think I should remind you earlier. The queen has something to say, but it doesn't matter. The regent has a distinguished status, has pure royal blood, and is a true royal relative. Nan 11 nodded, I believe that no one in the world will doubt that the regent's blood is pure and noble. So, the queen stared at Nan 11 and spoke slowly and clearly every word, if he wants to marry a wife or take a concubine in the future, he must be a decent official lady. Nan 11's expression paused slightly, and she couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. the queen means that my daughter is not a serious official lady. The queen reminded her, your mother is a merchant. If she thought this sentence would make Nan 11 feel embarrassed or ashamed, then she was obviously wrong. Nan 11 never felt that her mother, who was born in a merchant family, should be inferior to others. Let alone her new life, even when she was blindly in love with Gu Qingshu in her previous life, she never felt that her mother, who was born in a merchant family, should be inferior to others. Yes, my mother is indeed a merchant, Nan 11 smiled faintly, but my father is a prime minister, a first-rank official in the dynasty, and this position of prime minister was supported by my mother, who was a merchant. I wonder who is serious about it? Can a lady from the official family do this? The queen was so stunned by her that her face turned livid. So, Mr. Nan is able to sit in the position of prime minister thanks to Mrs. Nan. Nan 11 nodded without hesitation, it's all thanks to my mother. The queen sneered, I wonder what the prime minister will think when he hears this. Even in front of my father, I still say this. Nan 11 smiled lightly, the queen summoned me here just to tell me this. The queen's face became gloomier again. From the time Nan 11 entered the palace to the present, it has only been a short time, but the queen, who was dressed with dignity and grace, has lost her composure again and again. No matter how hard she tried to maintain her composure, she could not hide her pale and blue complexion. From the corner of her eye, Nan 11 noticed that the concubines on the left and right were all young. Of course, the current emperor was only in his 20s, so his concubines could not be that old. They are all Qianjinggong from the official family who have not yet matured through experience, and Nan 11 can guarantee that even the queen in charge of the phoenix seal in front of her has no real blood on her hands. At the moment, they are just gathering together to contain each other. Even the intrigues have nothing to do with it, and their thoughts are almost shown on their faces. However, in 2 years, the situation will definitely be different from today. Only those who have experienced the bloody storms of the harem and survived the bloody storms are considered to be scheming and skillful. Just don't talk about the other women in the harem, just talk about the ones here at this time. I'm afraid no one can tell how many will be left in 2 years. Girl Yunyu tugged on her dress quietly, we should go back, the prince is probably waiting outside. Insolent, Dozai looked at Yunyu coldly, the queen and all the concubines are here, do you still have any rules? Yunyu frowned, don't be so fierce, I'm not afraid of you. Miss Nan is arrogant, and the maids around her are really arrogant. The woman next to her in a pink palace dress said calmly, you dare to speak like this in front of the queen, which shows that you are a maid who has no rules. According to the palace, according to the rules, it is not an exaggeration to pull him out on the spot and kill him with a stick. Yunyu rolled her eyes with disdain. Who are you trying to scare? However, the queen is kind-hearted. She can avoid the death penalty, but cannot escape the living penalty. Take her out for 40 days to remember her. Let's see if she dares to be so unruly next time. The queen's expression changed slightly. Drag the maid from the Prince Regent's palace out to make a plan? Isn't this a direct slap in the regent's face? Is concubine Shu deliberately trying to set her up? Bairuro was about to speak, but heard Bai Dai nodding in agreement. What Madame Shafei said makes sense. Such a maid should be dragged out and beaten with a heavy board to teach her a lesson. Bairuro's face changed, and she said coldly, Bai Dai, shut up. Yin Yu sneered. I'm afraid that won't work, Nan 11 said indifferently. People in the regent's palace, even if they are just the most humble servants, are not the turn of others to deal with them, so I won't bother the queen and the ladies. After a pause, she bowed again, if there is nothing else, please forgive me for being disrespectful, and I will leave now. Shafei smiled, Nan 11, you are so arrogant today, disrespecting the queen, aren't you afraid of getting into trouble? Nan 11 smiled indifferently, since I dare to step into the palace, I don't worry about any problems. After speaking, she nodded slightly and turned to walk out. Nan 11 is disrespectful to me. She disrespects the palace rules, which means she disrespects the emperor. I will definitely set the palace rules today, Virura said coldly. Come here, take Nan 11 and her two maids down. Who dares? Yanyu stepped forward to protect Nan 11, like a sword unsheathed, with a flash of light between her eyebrows and a sharp voice. Yinchuang, whoever dares to attack the girl will be killed. Come on if you are not afraid of death. The palace was immediately tense because of this sentence. Just at this moment, a feminine and high-pitched voice sounded outside. The emperor has arrived. The regent has arrived. In an instant, everyone fell silent. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 78. Several sturdy maids in Fenji Palace were about to attack Nan 11 when they received the queen's order. The guards outside were ready to stop them at any time after hearing the queen's order. The concubines on both sides were waiting to see the show with great interest. Bai Dai's face showed a bit of gloating. Only the queen who gave the order suddenly felt a bit regretful, fearing that if she really had a quarrel with Nan 11, it would be out of control and she would not be able to explain to the regent. Everyone in the palace had different thoughts, but after this loud voice, they all froze. Their faces changed drastically in an instant, and everyone got up and left the table very quickly. They didn't have time to think about anything, and hurriedly went out to welcome the emperor. Your Majesty, I pay my respects to you. Long live the emperor. I pay my respects to the regent. Long live the regent. The regent is in a high position and has great power. He has been in power since the time of the previous emperor. He is of a higher generation than the emperor. Which of the empresses and concubines present is not his junior? So at this moment, there is such a scene in front of us. From the empress to the concubines in the harem, everyone bowed their heads and saluted respectfully to the emperor and the regent. The maids and eunuchs knelt on the ground. Only Nan 11 was still standing. Standing among the people kneeling and saluting, she stood out like a crane among chickens. The eyes of the emperor and the regent fell on her at the same time. The young emperor was dressed in a dragon robe, with a slender figure, majestic eyebrows and eyes, and his facial features were somewhat similar to those of the regent Rong Yu. However, in Nan 11's eyes, he was not even one-tenth of the regent's demeanor. Rong Chuiyun is just a narrow-minded and calculating emperor, not worthy of being called a wise king. Nan 11 thought of the last fire in the regent's mansion in her previous life, with corpses everywhere and the miserable and painful wailing of the servants in the mansion. Rong Yu, a man as noble as a banished immortal, a rare patron saint of the great Zhou dynasty in 100 years, was buried under this man's dark and dirty calculations. Nan 11 restrained the hatred in her heart, but there seemed to be a sharp murderous look in her eyes when she looked at Rong Chuiyun. She took a deep breath, afraid that he would notice something strange, and quickly concealed her emotions. When Nan 11 was looking at Rong Chuiyun was also looking at Nan 11. This woman who has been rumored recently and made the emperor's uncle imprisoned in the mansion against his status and principles, turned out to be such a stunning beauty. No wonder. Rong Chuiyun was about to speak, but saw the originally indifferent girl pursed her lips and turned to look at the regent beside him. Her eyes were slightly red, and her delicate and refined face slowly revealed a helpless look. Your Highness, she bowed gracefully and bit her lips lightly. Although she did not cry, she made people feel extremely aggrieved. Before she finished speaking, she saw a black shadow flash in front of her, and she fell into a warm embrace. Rong Chuiyun was slightly stunned. He did not expect that the woman who was calm and composed a moment ago suddenly became a weak daughter. I'm here, don't be afraid. Rong Yu's eyebrows were cold, but his voice was particularly gentle, as if he was afraid of scaring the girl in his arms, but his eyes like ice swept coldly across everyone present. Silver Moon. Everyone who was swept by his eyes shuddered, and clearly felt a chill running up his spine from the soles of his feet. I'm here. Yin Yu also knelt on the ground, and replied respectfully but loudly, so that everyone present could hear clearly, reporting to the prince, the queen wants the girl to enter the palace for selection. If the girl refuses, the queen will have someone take her down. As soon as these words came out, the weather seemed to suddenly change from the season of spring and flowers to the bitter winter. The air condensed, and the faces of everyone present changed. Rong Chuyun looked at Queen Bai in shock. Enter the palace for selection? When did he let her make her own decisions? The queen's heart sank, and she suppressed her anger, raised her head and explained, "Uncle, please calm down, the matter is not dash. Did the king ask you to speak?" Rong Yu spoke, his voice was as cold as the ice and snow accumulated on the Tianshan mountain for thousands of years, extremely cold, but also extremely noble. "Yin Yu, continue." The queen's face turned pale in an instant, embarrassed and terrified. Yin Yu responded with a yes and continued, "The queen and the concubines asked the girl to kneel down before them. I said that the girl is the future princess of the prince, and the prince has allowed the girl to enter the palace without kneeling, but the queen did not believe it. By the way, the queen's sister, Miss Bai Dai, has been mocking and scolding the girl since she first met her, and has been trying to sow discord in front of the queen. She also called the girl a. Bai Dai's face turned pale. The rest of the words seemed difficult to say. Yin Yu lowered her head and said it all at once. She also said that the girl was fickle, unfeeling, and trying to climb the prince's high branch, saying that the girl was born in a merchant family and had a low status. In short, every sentence was just finding fault. I defended the girl for a few words, and the concubine Shu suggested that the queen drag me out and beat me with a stick. There was a dead silence around. Everyone was too stiff to react, and they wished they could disappear here immediately. Nan 11 quietly curled up in the arms of the regent, lowered her head, and looked weak and helpless, but in her heart she admired Yin Yu's eloquence and clear mind countless times. She could always express the most important things in a sonorous and powerful way, and raise the fear and anger of others to the highest point in the shortest time. For example, the anger of the regent Rong Yu, the fear of the queen and the people watching the show. It was really a matter of time. The next person watching the show became her. A thick layer of ice formed on Rong Yu's noble and indifferent face. The air around him was rapidly dropping at a speed that the skin could feel, and it was so cold that people shivered from the bones. I didn't. Bai Dai's face was as pale as paper, and she no longer had the arrogance just now. Your Majesty is wise. I didn't deliberately embarrass Miss Nan. It was Miss Nan herself who didn't understand the rules of the palace. Yin Chuang, the cold words overflowed from his lips, and Rong Yu's delicate eyebrows were as cold as a storm. Slap your mouth. Rong Chuyun suddenly turned his head and suppressed his angry voice, Uncle, this. I obey your command. The cold Yin Chuang responded respectfully, stood up from the ground and walked directly to Bai Dai, raised his hand and slapped her face. Snap! 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 Bai Dai didn't even have time to react. Yin Chuang was a martial artist, and the force she used was so great that she screamed in pain, Empress, Empress sister, Empress sister, save me. The others watched the scene in fear, their faces turned pale, and they dared not breathe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 79. Your Majesty, Bairara came back to her senses and looked at His Majesty the Emperor in disbelief. Dire is my concubine's sister. Please be merciful to your Majesty. Your Majesty. Rong Chuyun gritted his teeth, feeling angry and losing face. At this moment, the majesty of the emperor was severely trampled to the ground, leaving him with no face left. Damn queen, You are so stupid and ignorant. He clearly asked her to win over Nan 11 in order to use her to deal with the regent, but she actually completely offended Nan 11 in such a short time. And that damn stupid Bai, who succeeds less than fails and fails more than meets the eye. Apart from using her identity as a sister to show off her power in the palace day by day, what other role can she play? He had already warned the queen not to let her sister enter the palace often, but what was the result? The crackling sounds of claps and mouths were still ringing, impacting everyone's eardrums, making people feel more and more fearful. Rong Chiweun took a deep breath and tried to show the magnanimity and majesty of an emperor. Uncle, today's matter is that the queen mishandled the matter and acted improperly. However, considering that the queen is still young, she is still a little ignorant. Please, Uncle Emperor, please don't argue with her. Rong Yu pursed her thin lips slightly, held her beloved woman in her arms with her long and strong arms, and patted her slender back with her fingers, as if to soothe her emotions. The noble and cold face was filled with an aura of ice. He turned a deaf ear to the emperor's words and obviously had no intention of exposing him. Family has its own laws, and the palace has its rules. Rong Chiweun's face became gloomier, but he still controlled his temper. The queen has always taken care of the affairs of the harem. Beatty is her sister. If she makes a mistake, she will. It's the queen who is not teaching her well. I will definitely let the queen teach her the rules of the palace later. After a pause, as for the queen, I will ask her to stay in the palace and think about her past. The emperor's uncle has to take care of everything. He has to take care of state affairs and train soldiers and horses. This trivial matter is not worth the emperor's anger. These words are both grace and power. It not only meant to show weakness and smooth things over, but also did not forget to show the majesty of the emperor. It was intended to tell him that this was the harem, and only the emperor had the right to deal with the queen and concubines. Even if the regent had a high position and power, he should have some sense of proportion. However, Rong Yu just didn't speak, obviously not intending to give the emperor this face, and his expression was cold and unkind. When Rong Chiweun saw this, he was filled with hatred, and a dark and sharp light flashed in his eyes. Beatty's face was swollen to the point of disgrace, her voice was getting weaker and weaker, bloodshot streaks were running down the corners of her mouth, and she looked miserable. What happened today is my fault. Please forgive Beatty. The queen saw that the regent didn't even give the emperor face, so she could only plead in a low voice, Beatty offended Miss Nan, I will let her prepare for it another day, a generous gift and a visit to apologize. After a pause, Miss Nan, please have a lot, don't argue with me like Bai. Let my girl have a lot of money. Yunyu snorted coldly, Miss Bai didn't show mercy to my girl just now. Didn't the queen hear how unpleasant those words she scolded were? Bairura gritted her teeth and clenched her hands tightly under the sleeves of her phoenix robe, her sharp nails almost piercing her palms. She almost wanted to kill this talkative maid on the spot. However, she can't. Even the emperor has to be patient in front of the regent, so what does she mean as a queen? She just didn't expect that Rong Yu would really be so protective of Nan 11, not even giving him the face of an emperor in front of so many people. He was like a king. Bairura pursed her lips and turned to look at Nan 11, who was huddled in the regent's arms without saying a word. Bai Dai is my sister. I hope Miss Nan can look at my face and forgive her this time. Nan 11 raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes, then turned to look at the queen. The queen just said that my daughter was born in a merchant family and has a humble status, so she is not worthy of the regent. Bairura's expression changed. Rong Yu. Nan 11 raised her eyes and looked at the noble and indifferent man, am I really not worthy of you? Rong Yu pursed her lips and lowered her eyes to look at her, they are blind. You mean, I'm worthy of you? Yes, Rong Yu nodded, only you are qualified to be my princess. In front of so many people, Nan 11's question and the regent's answer were like a harsh slap to Bairura's face, making her face turn red and the embarrassment in her heart turned into boiling anger. There was a burning embarrassment on his face. Nan 11 still felt that the slap was not harsh enough, so she added casually, "Then when I see the queen in front of her in the future, do I need to kneel down and salute her?" "Wrong," you said in a calm voice, "no one dares to make you kneel." Rong Chuyun narrowed his eyes and stood silently with his hands behind his back, his expression cold and unpredictable. "No one dares to make you kneel." "No one? Including him, His Majesty the Emperor? Is the Prince Regent planning to rebel?" "Sure enough, it is a wolfish ambition. But some people say that I'm a frivolous person, and that the prince doesn't really like me." Rong Yu looked coldly. "You knew, whoever dares to talk nonsense to a girl in the future will have his tongue pulled out directly." Yunyu responded simply, "Yes, I will obey." Nan 11 stretched out her hand and tugged Rong Yu's hair, and made a delicate request, "From now on, apart from me, the prince is not allowed to have concubines, and no concubines are allowed to have concubines. I don't want any random women to come in." The concubines all gasped. "Nan 11 is so brave. How dare you make such an unreasonable request in front of the regent and the emperor? It's just too much. Isn't she afraid of angering the regent, making him think she doesn't know what's good for her and turn against him on the spot?" Obviously, Nan 11 is not afraid. Rong Yu locked his eyes on her delicate features, and his voice was faint but he could hear obvious indulgence. "I will listen to you. There will be no concubines or maids in the regent's mansion in the future." The air became quieter. Whether it was the queen or the concubines, they all had indescribable complex feelings in their hearts at this time. Envy. Of course there was. Jealousy. Of course there was. But in addition to envy and jealousy, they felt more of an unknown fear. Even if they had not been in the palace for a long time, which concubine was not born in the imperial capital's official family? The hierarchy between the monarch and the minister. Even the regent should respectfully call himself minister in front of the emperor, even if it was just a superficial respect. But he didn't. No one dared to think deeply about what the regent's attitude today meant. But there is no doubt that the emperor must have been furious, but he had to endure it for the time being. Yin's Huang Rong Yu's eyes turned slightly, and his voice was cold. "Stop it." Yin's Huang obeyed and stepped aside. Beatty fell to the ground like a rag, and her swollen face could no longer be seen. "Since the queen can't manage the harem, she should be put in solitary confinement for the time being," he said, his voice as cold as black ice. "What do you think, Your Majesty?" Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 80. Rong Chuyun calmed down despite being extremely angry. He knew that he didn't have the strength to compete with the regent. He had just ascended the throne for a year, and his throne had not been firmly established. Many ministers in the court were afraid of the power and means of the regent. Some of the ministers were the regent's confidants. They were at the center of power, and they all followed the regent's lead. Even the Emperor Rong Chuyun had to take their existence into consideration. Moreover, the regent had full control of 2/3 of the military power of the Great Zhou Kingdom, and the most elite Iron Cavalry Black Armor Army only recognized Rong Yu as the commander-in-chief, which really made Rong Chuyun extremely angry and unable to sleep at night. Rong Chuyun had many brothers, and those brothers who had competed with him for the throne were almost intact. Except for the second Prince Rong Chue and the Lin family who were dealt with, he had not had the opportunity to deal with others. If he offended the regent at this time, Rong Chuyun knew that his throne would become precarious. The queen is not good at managing the harem, and she should be punished. The uncle is right, he spoke calmly, ignoring the queen's sudden change of expression. From today on, the queen will stay in Fenji Palace and not go out. She will reflect on her mistakes behind closed doors. To show his sincerity, he also mentioned the concubine Shu, who Yin Yu had just accused. Concubine Shu has just entered the palace and probably doesn't understand the rules of the harem very well. She will stay in Ganquan Palace to cultivate herself. Without my permission, you are not allowed to step out of Ganquan Palace. Concubine Shu's face turned pale instantly, but she dared not say a word. The regent has such a tough attitude that he doesn't even give the emperor face in order to protect Nan 11. Who else dares to hope to get a privilege? Nan 11 listened quietly to the emperor punishing his queen and concubines, thinking that he is worthy of being an emperor. He is really flexible and willing to sacrifice his woman in exchange for temporary peace when necessary. However, the more such people are, the more they bear grudges. Once he gains power, the humiliation he suffered today will definitely be returned tenfold or 100-fold. What a pity. Nan 11's lips curved slightly. She would not give him this chance again. Prince, she raised her head and spoke softly, let's go back. Rong Yu lowered his eyes and looked at her calm and refined face. Looking into the pair of clear and clean eyes that hid a bit of cunning, his heart softened, and a kind of emotion called throbbing slowly fermented in his internal organs. He nodded gently, yeah. Nan 11 knew to stop when she was ahead. The queen was in charge of the harem, and her status was so noble. According to common sense, it was not a big deal to show her power today. After all, she was a woman who ruled the country. It just so happened that Nan 11 was a person who was not easy to mess with. She was different from those girls from noble families who were submissive in front of her. Nan 11 knew better than anyone that the regent would absolutely protect her, so she had no worries about confronting the queen. Not only did she confront the queen and concubines, but even the emperor was no exception. Nan 11 had said before that in her previous life, she was confused and blind. She fell in love with someone who was not worthy of her love, paid a tragic price for it, and also implicated the regent and had a bad end. Of course, the final result of Mrs. Nan, who lost her daughter, must not be very good, so in this life, she must live without being depressed, take revenge when there is hatred, and take grievances when there is grievance, so that all those she cares about and those who care about her can live safely and smoothly. In this life, she will never become anyone's weak spot again, nor will she let anyone use her to deal with those she cares about. As for the queen who rules the harem, although her status is noble and prominent, and it seems that she has unlimited glory, but facing a cold and ruthless emperor, how long can such glory last? Thinking this in her heart, and looking at the man who was protecting her in his arms, Nan 11 felt calmer than ever before. Rong Yu ignored the ugly expressions of Rong Chiweun and his concubines, and reached out to Nan 11. Nan 11 smiled and took Rong Yu's arm. The two turned around and walked out of Fenji Palace. Yin Yu and Yin Shuang followed. Before leaving, Yin Yu did not forget to send a provocative look to Tao Ji, who was kneeling beside the queen. Who said that you dare not put on airs in Fenji Palace? Isn't this it? Not only did you put on airs, but you were able to retreat safely, and your high-ranking queen and the arrogant and domineering Bai girl didn't dare to say a word. Humph, a bully who only knows how to make trouble for her girl, and you don't even dare to fart in front of the regent? However, Tao Ji's face turned pale with fear, and she lowered her head and dared not raise it. At this time, how could she have time to notice Yin Yu's eyes? Rong Chiweun stared at the two people who left with an expressionless face. His eyes were filled with coldness, and his hands hanging in the sleeves of the dragon robe were tightly clenched. Your Majesty, the queen gritted her teeth, her tone full of reluctance, Your Majesty. Pa! Rong Chiweun slapped her. The crisp sound of the slap rang out, and the air around them condensed again. Bairura covered her face in a daze, and looked up at the emperor in front of her in disbelief. Your Majesty. You are not good enough to do things, but you are good at making trouble. Rong Chiyun's voice was sinister and cold, with a strong murderous aura. What did I tell you? I asked you to win over the girl from the Nan family and to have a good relationship with her, not to let you use your status as the queen to intimidate her. And your sister, how many times have I told you? Tell her to come to the palace less. Do you think what I said is wind around your ears? The queen's face was pale, shocked, angry and horrified, and her face was burning. Being slapped in front of so many concubines, she, as a queen, lost all her face. It was more embarrassing than being imprisoned. The emperor didn't take her as a queen seriously at all. Don't think that I value your father, so you can do whatever you want in the harem. Rong Chiyun warned coldly. From today on, I don't want to see your Bai family's women appear in the palace again. Let her get out of the palace. After saying this, he left with a wave of his sleeves, leaving behind the queen who was as stiff as a wooden sculpture, several concubines who were frightened and pale, and all the palace maids and eunuchs who knelt on the ground in fear and dared not raise their heads. Queen Dozai climbed up from the ground and carefully supported the queen. Are you okay? Bairuru took a deep breath, and her gritted teeth could be heard in her voice. Nan 11, that bitch, I can't coexist with her. Compared to the dark clouds in the harem, Nan 11's mood at this time was extremely comfortable. Today, the queen was slapped in the face. The concubines in the harem are all in fear. They will not dare to trouble her again for a long time in the future. Probably no one will be stupid enough to summon her to the palace again. Nan 11 raised her lips, and her tone was obviously happy. I think I am too rebellious to dare to challenge the queen.